I'd like to call to order the April 18th meeting of the Portsmouth Committee on Arts and Nonprofits. It is 12:05 p.m. And Stephanie, you are online taking minutes, is that correct?
Correct. And would everybody please, who is in the room, please remember to speak into the mic so I know who's speaking. Thank you.
Yeah, pull your mics up nice and close and then everyone online will be able to hear us. So we're going to skip over item 2, the approval of minutes, because we don't have an in-person quorum at the moment, but I have a stack of all of our minutes that we were trying to approve today, Stephanie, and they're really fantastic. So I'm really happy, and I'll be excited hopefully next month to get those approved. But for now, we're good. So the first thing on our agenda is an update on the Americans for the Arts study, AFT study. So Robin, do you want to take it away with Renee?
I'll take that if that's okay, Renee.
Yeah.
We had an initial Q&A, and the invitation went out from the city. Stephanie did a really nice job of putting the city seal at the top of it, which we thought was going to be really impressive. But I have to say, and Renee may agree or disagree, that we didn't have as many people as I thought, and at least for 4 people who said they were going to be there were not. Some of it could be because some people have done it before and they know and they didn't have any questions, but there were a lot of new people around who were not there. So in terms of our schedule, the next thing that happens is that Renee and Lauren and I get trained by AFTA National on April 21st. And then we're going to have our first round of training for nonprofits on May 12th. And Renee, it's going to be 9 or 9:30. We're not sure. We're just getting the okay from the library. And we have a small committee. And I think what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to get on the phone and call people and make sure they understand that it can be anybody from their organization coming. It can be a board member, a volunteer, a staff member. It doesn't have to be the executive director. But there are different things. There's paper surveys this year, but there's also going to be QR codes, which is just great because people can go on their phone and do it. But it's still, people have to understand what it is, how to do it, and what's required. So I think we're just going to have a period of time where we're going to be reaching out to people individually and maybe even orienting them individually. There are 5 of us because we've got Lauren and Renee and myself and Max Feintuck and Dean Plager on the committee, and they're open to doing those kinds of calls. So yeah, that's the time frame. We'll, like I said, the training's going to be May 12th, but then we'll also have, that's instead of recording that, we'll also have another live one on Zoom, a training a little bit after that for people who couldn't come on May 12th. And then with Stephanie's help, we'll need a web page where people can go and download the actual physical paper survey if that's the way they want to go. And some of them may. For some of the things, it's easier, and some it's easier on the phone. Anything else at the moment, Renee?
No, I think that's it. I think it'd be interesting to know if anybody re-listened, because we did record that. I wonder if there's a way to tell if they did or if there's not, you know, the people that couldn't come. I don't know.
I don't think there's any way to track whether people watch
Yeah.
this video file.
If it's on YouTube, you can see how many viewings there were.
Upload to YouTube or?
I don't know where Stephanie put the link.
Well, that's okay. It's really not that big of a deal. I was just curious more than anything else. I mean, the most important thing is when we do the actual training. So that's when it's really important for people to come.
Now, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say one last thing. It's a challenge because it's coming from the city and not from our personal Zoom account. We can't see who's registered without asking Stephanie. So we don't mean for Stephanie to have more work, but she does, because that's just one of the things that happens. We can't see who's registered, and we're going to have to be asking her a lot so that we know who to call as it gets closer.
So Russ, if I may, I gave Lauren the login credentials, so she should be able to check registration. And I apologize because I didn't post the the recording anywhere because I thought you were going to send it to your whole list of people. So I recommend that you do that, but I will also create that page that you'll then need for the forms, and I can post the recording there.
So Stephanie, I'm sorry to take time. Help me right now. Where, if we did want to send that recording out, where do we find it?
I believe I sent it to Lauren. I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you and Renee, so you both have that link.
Okay.
You did, because Lauren already sent it out. I got it.
Okay.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought I had seen the link come through.
Okay,
All right.
sorry. We are
But she didn't do that.
emailing so much, and there's so many email threads that I apologize. Obviously, I was emailing too. I just,
You sent it out last Thursday. 14.
okay, good. Sorry about that.
So I will create that page for you and post the link there as well.
Thank you, Steph. I think that's about it. We just really, yeah, please, everybody here, make sure that someone from your staff gets to the training, because it is different than it was 6 years ago.
Go ahead, Nico.
I just had a question about this, not knowing that much about the process. I'm wondering if Afton makes any prepackaged training materials like videos or documents that can be circulated to people so that they don't have to like schedule a meeting altogether.
Not that we know of, but if they have this year, we'll find out on April 21st, because that's their presentation to us. It's a great question. They have not in the past.
Gotcha.
But we'll find out on the
Okay.
21st.
The data collection for the audience surveys, is that May 1st through April 30th, the next
Yes.
12 months starting next week?
Yes.
All right, so we're kind of at that moment right now where we do need to make sure at least the organizations in the room are ready to get moving on this, because I think we're going to experience probably our highest volume of performances over the next 6 months while the weather's good, and make sure that we're capturing a good amount of data. Because from my experience in the past, what can happen is we're all busy and we can get a little behind the curve on getting the data. And if we can possibly, any way possible, have May, particularly June, July, August, and September be really strong reporting months, I think that would do a lot for the committee to make sure that we're not scrambling in the fall and winter, especially with all the unknowns with COVID. We don't know what's going to happen next November, December, January. So anything we can do to get as much data as possible in the next 6 months would be huge.
One of the challenges with the paper surveys is always that people do a good job of getting the paper surveys done, and then they don't call us and tell us to come pick it up, and the surveys sit on somebody's desk. So that's happened. But Jerry Ann just logged on, and I was thinking, you know, I can imagine that there's a big group that's done one of the tours that that Jerry Ann's organization does, and at the end of the tour, somebody's got a QR code. People answer the survey on their phone, and we don't have to worry about that. That goes right to national. So it's just going to be so much easier.
Go ahead, Kate.
Is there any basic information that can be shared with nonprofits that are trying to collect data for the first 12 days in May, pre-training, at May 1st to May 12th?
No, you have to do it on the day of. In other words, you can't backtrack to anybody,
Right.
so I'm not sure the,
Right, so the training doesn't occur until
Right.
12 days into the month,
Right.
and we're supposed to be collecting data starting the 1st. Is there anything that we can share with entities that are willing to kind of done it before, or willing to jump in prior to training so that we can capture those first 12 days?
the answer is yes, but I don't know that we need to.
Did that video that was recorded last week, does that cover all the information you need to know? Like if
It's not a training, that
That's
was
not
just
training.
basic information, not how to do the survey. So, okay, the answer is yes, we have the survey form because it was sent to us so that we could look at it. And we have the cover sheet that goes with it. So maybe I don't know if we'll need to do that. What do you think?
Well, Tina and I have an event on May 6th at the Music Hall, which would be great for gathering information, especially because it's very heavily attended by the local community and not just people coming from outside. So there might be a way to try and organize something for
We
that.
can check. We don't
You know,
have
we
the
can-
QR code yet.
Sorry, you know what we could do after, I guess the training is this Thursday, right? So whatever they give us, we could share if any of it's appropriate and would help with the surveys until we get the actual training done. We could share that with this committee and at least, you would have, I don't know what they're going to share with us. I imagine it's going to be everything we need to know. So, but I don't know. What do you think, Robin?
Well, we have a sample of the paper. We just don't have we don't have our QR code yet, which is.
Right.
Right. So that's a great idea. We'll see what we get on the 21st, and it's easy to email this group and
And I
send
was
you.
gonna say, we have a show in May, and then we don't have anything until the fall. So, our show opens May 6th, popular date, I guess, but, it'd be great to have something. We've done it before. We could just do the paper one.
Great, thank you, Kate. That's a great idea.
Any other questions or comments about the AFTA study? Are you going to learn later this week when you meet with them the process for the organizations to do their surveys, or how does that work?
You mean the financial
Yeah, the
reporting?
financial
They'll
reporting.
tell us. I think it's gonna be fourth quarter.
Okay.
So they'll tell us on the 21st.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, excellent, because I know that's the other heavy lift on this. It's getting the-
Although they said they made it easier this year. So,
Cool. What was it?
They do it at the end of the day time.
I'm not exactly sure what, the challenge I always run into with the after reporting study is, I'm trying to remember, they ask for a specific 12-month cycle, don't they? So like for those of us who have fiscal years that start in September, it's like a weird overlap of data. But I think they're gonna let us know, like Strawberry Bank will have to report, information that would typically be in their 990 from X date. I don't know if it's gonna be May through April or what they're gonna do.
We don't know yet.
We don't know yet. Yeah, that's why I was asking about whether or not there was any info on that yet, because I know that's always been a challenging one for us, is to make sure that we can get that data nice and clean the right way.
Yeah, so then our fiscal year is so odd, it doesn't match up.
Yeah, we all have different, it seems like not everyone has the same. There's two common ones, calendar and July 1st. We're not even on that. So, yeah. Go ahead, Barbara.
Remember too, fourth quarter isn't fourth quarter. Because fourth quarter for this after study is actually like next January, February, March. So keep that in mind. Some of the craziness for a lot of people was always an actual Q4 right
Yep.
before the holidays. And with this changed calendar, their fourth quarter is not going to be
We'll see.
October, November, December. It's going to be like February, March, April.
Yeah, well, that's yet to be revealed, but hopefully that'll be the case, because that will certainly make it easier to push it out a little bit and to have it in the beginning of the year instead of the end of the year. But I guess we'll know more by our next meeting.
Yep.
So, all right, anything else, Renee or Robin?
that's it.
Thank you for all of your work on that. Were you gonna say something, Robin? Or Renee, sorry.
Nope, I just said thanks.
Thank you for all of your work on this. I know that this is not the easiest of projects, but it's definitely hugely valuable. When those of you who were at Nancy's retirement party last week, she referenced the AFTA study in her farewell speech to the community, and I thought it was really sweet and how important that was to the community. So thank you for all your work on this. Jason wasn't able to join us today. Ben, do you have any updates on the marketing project?
There isn't a tremendous amount to update on, just that it is ongoing. What we have been promised from the team at Darcy Creative is a monthly update. I asked when the clock started on that month and when we receive our first update. She said our first full month will be, the report will be to us the first week of May, which is a little tricky because the next meeting of this group is the Monday of the first week of May, so I'm not, I think it's May 2nd. So I'm not entirely sure we'll have it by noon on Monday of that first week, but I will see what we can do. But things are going along. TV has started our our digital promotion and our Google Ad grant, Google AdWords grant program was focused on Restaurant Week, but with Restaurant Week starting this week, we will transition that energy over to this effort. So yeah, so we will be seeing quite a bit of activity over the next couple of weeks on this, but everything is moving along as it should.
Actually, our next meeting is May 16th.
Oh,
We
nice.
don't have a meeting on the 2nd. We're back to our normal once a month, third Monday.
Oh, I just had an update. Mike. So I will, on 16th, we will definitely have a report to share on the first month.
All right, excellent. And has everyone had a chance to see the website? Oh, I know we looked at it at the meeting, but if you could again circulate, some links to things. I know that we're not going to see a lot of the social media advertising because it's purposefully not targeting us. But anything that you can share and circulate to the group, I think would be good for people to take a look at before the next meeting. All right, then we just have one more thing on our agenda for today, and that is the work on the cultural plan, which is still so early in the process. I asked in the meeting request for today for people to think about whether or not they could be actively involved in the cultural planning process on the cultural plan committee. I think this is going to be a really important group. I haven't quite figured out yet. I know we had some conversation last month about, especially on the last Monday of the month, we met with Chris and Ellen about the best process from a technical standpoint from the city about whether it's actually called a committee or it's a work group or a subgroup. I don't know the language yet on exactly what it's going to be. I can tell you that there were at least 2 or 3 committee members of this group who had expressed interest in being involved on that committee or that group or the work group or whatever it is. A few of us met with Howard Altschiller from Seacoast Media Group this past month, and he's interested in being involved. He's the, I don't know if he's technically the publisher now or the editor of Herald, but he's high up and heavily involved in Portsmouth Herald and local media. And we had a conversation about the cultural plan and the need for local media to be connected to it and be a resource for connecting with the community on it. So he's very interested in being involved in the process. And I think the next step is probably going to be identifying, finalizing who in this group is able to participate in the committee, and then doing some sort of call out to the community of interest for people to join the committee. And that's kind of where I'm looking for feedback from this group right now. That I think what we need to be careful of, what we learned from Chris and Ellen, is to not have the group that works on creating the cultural plan be exclusively people who are executive level staff of arts organizations in the community. I think we want a broader base of community members participating in this so that we can really get good data from the broad community and make sure that all voices are heard and that it truly is a community plan and not just driven by the organizations. So I'm curious if people have thoughts on ways to build this committee, what size the committee should be. I think it was a good sized committee last time, 16 to 20 people, I think. And we did talk a little bit about how volunteerism has changed over the past 20 years and the way people do work. But I do think we probably need to get the committee together before we talk to the city about how the funds are going to be used and whether or not a consultant can be brought in to assist with the process. So does anyone have any thoughts on this?
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm still struggling with, I know that there's a lot of work that goes along with it, but I'm struggling with the time commitment as we decide who should sit on this committee and not, and, pulling people from outside and whatever. How do we frame this?
Was anyone here? Were you on the committee, Jen, last time?
I was part of the focus group.
Focus groups.
So I was gonna say, that's the way that people outside the committee were reached. there were a lot of different focus groups. I think there were some individual artists, there were community members, there were people that weren't involved in the arts at all.
Yeah, there were probably 60 or more focus group members in addition to the committee.
Right.
It also, the time commitment depends upon, what balance that committee or subcommittee work group decides on as far as hiring a consultant. So how much work is done by the committee versus how much is done by an outside consultant. I think that's really, I think from what you're saying, what they're going to determine.
Yeah, I mean, my assumption is that it will be a group that will have to meet together once a month for the duration of the project, that it's probably a 2-year project that we're looking at. I think we had the aggressive goal of doing the cultural plan work during the timeline of the current city council. We learned from Chris and Ellen last time that it was a little longer than 2 years that it took them to do it. I think the entire thing from conception to publication was probably closer to 4 years last time they did it. I think we could do it much faster than that because we have a framework to build upon from last time. But I do think it's probably going to take us to the end of 2023.
I think there's two different ways you can look at kind of the kickoff or the organization of it. There can be a large committee recruited from a variety of places, and then that committee looks into the idea of a consultant. Or there's a very small group of some from this community and this committee, excuse me, maybe, and Kate, maybe some others, who talk about whether they want a consultant first, and then the consultant comes in and helps that smaller group create that bigger group, because maybe that consultant is somebody who's done this before and has a better idea of how to engage the larger group, because it's just when you bring a consultant in who's done it before to help you. So one way may be a smaller group looks at that, brings in the consultant, then you get the bigger committee, and then you move forward. Just another way to look at it.
Robin, that's a great idea. The other thing I think, and it's in the back of everybody's mind, right? There's so much going on right now. We're all trying to get back to whatever normal is, which we can see in this room. And it's the reason I'm not there is because of like getting back to our normal schedule. And then the other thing on top of that is the Portsmouth 400. A number of us are involved in that. And now we're going to layer on the cultural committee. So I was saying to Russ last week, boy, I would love to be a part of the cultural committee, but then you have to really look at your schedule and say, what can I commit to? And commit to it, because if we're going to stick to this aggressive plan, even missing a meeting here and there is going to be kind of a big deal. So I really like I like your idea, Robin. I think that's great when you start out smaller and then go big, as opposed to getting 50 people in a room. And it's like, no disrespect to anyone, but we all know what it's like to herd cats, right? So I think we start small and go out from there with some expert advice. Because even I was involved kind of on the fringes of it, but I would need guidance and expert advice on how to proceed. So I really like Robin's idea to start small and grow it from there.
I think it's definitely a logical path. I think the questions I have are sort of a chicken and egg thing. How do we secure the funding from the city to be able to bring in the consultant to get everything off the ground? And could this be approached with the city the same way we approached the marketing project, which is, can we secure 3 to 6 months of funding for consultants to launch the process? And in those 3 to 6 months, we'll come back with what we need for the longer term process. Go ahead, Kate.
I think that, the city council's already backed the cultural plan and asked the city manager to find funding for it. So, and the city manager is on board with doing that. So I think that we're in a really good position. And I'm happy to serve as that liaison
Okay,
And I'm happy to sit on this committee.
oh, definitely, that would be
support.
fantastic.
And serve as that liaison and make sure that we're having regular conversations with city staff. And that I'm sure that the funding is there and that the city manager is very supportive. So I'm not as concerned about making sure we get the funding. I think that she's already planned for that.
Okay.
I would say.
So then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the small group of committee members along with Councilor Cook who have already expressed interest in being involved on this particular project and gather them together to figure out how to put out a call for an RFP or RFQ for a consultant for this project. And then work with the city to go through that vetting process and see if we can, over the next 2 months, get something out there and possibly have someone in place. I'm kind of, it's interesting that you talk about Portsmouth 400, Barbara. I think that it could potentially serve as a rallying point for a cultural plan and for listening groups. And that 2023 might be a really, really great year for collecting visioning data from the community as a whole and getting buy-in as part of the Portsmouth 400, saying, all right, we're at 400 years, let's look at our next cultural plan, whether it's a 10-year plan or a 5-year plan, whatever we're aiming for, and leverage the fact that it's our 400th birthday to get people to the table to do some visioning. So that would be my hope. But I do agree, it's a busy time. Does that make sense, Councilor Cook, to go that route?
Yeah, I think that it's entirely reasonable. And I think that the timeline's reasonable too. I'm thinking that, if you are involving an outside consultant to support in whatever way, you could decrease the timeline significantly.
That would be my hope. Any other comments or questions on this? Yes.
This, I don't know what to call it, the steering.
Larry, pull up your microphone, because I know the people online want to hear that.
Sorry about that. Maybe they don't want to hear. Let's move the mic back. That steering group will be a small group by definition. I wonder if we can somehow assure the cultural organizations and the various parts of culture in Portsmouth that they will be represented in one way. They don't have to serve on that steering committee to ensure they're involved in the plan. And I would imagine that's where the focus groups come in. But I think we maybe need to assure that that's
Yeah, I think that steering group is going to not only help with the consultant figure out who the actual committee is going to be, but figure out a plan for who the stakeholder groups are. There's many different ways that you can define stakeholder groups, but we're going to want the people in this room to look over that stakeholder group list and make sure that we've got the representation that we want or need in the process. And then you're right, those listening sessions are going to be vital, making sure that the people are in the room and at the table. And then also, I think that working with Seacoast Media Group could potentially help us reach a broader base, both through the clever way they put inserts in the paper that people could cut out right on and mail back in, but also now using media technology, because most of Seacoast Media Group's online now anyway. So there's going to be some potential for leveraging that reach to be able to get broader base survey input. So that's my hope. Other comments or questions? Go ahead, Nico.
Just when we get to that point, I'm wondering if we can't also use some of the approaches that marketing is using, like Facebook ads, to try to reach people in our community. If those are, that's probably pretty effective.
Yeah, I think we definitely use stuff like that. You were one of the people who said you're willing to be involved with this, right? I
Yes.
think I saw, yes, awesome. So definitely, yeah, be on top of that, because I think that's using today's technology that didn't exist 20 years ago. It's going to be huge. Other comments or questions?
I would just say, I think it's really important to have young people, because they're the ones who are gonna be, fulfilling this plan in 20 years.
That's right. We were young when we did the last one.
I know, don't rub that in, Russ.
All right, excellent. Any reflection on Ellen and Chris's conversation? I guess it was probably 2 or 3 weeks ago now at this point, where they met with us. I thought it was really fascinating and interesting. And I do think that they are willing to be on call for us, to answer questions and help anything. But did anyone have any thoughts upon having heard their comments?
Just seems like the most important thing I heard was the inclusivity of stakeholders. That they felt that they were very successful in doing that.
Yeah, I agree. And also how this grew out of what had been happening in the late 90s, the shipyard project, and all of that work. The cultural plan wasn't something isolated. And I think we can view it that way this time around as well, that this is growing out of a reinvigoration of community arts representation coming out of the pandemic and coming together to try and get this moving. All right, excellent.
Sorry, Russ, I just had a
Go ahead.
question too.
Yeah.
When, I really loved hearing from both of them, I thought that was awesome, very inspiring. So I've been in the area for about 10 years, and I feel, it was cool feeling the impact of their work in my personal history, which is really nice. So it made me confident that this work is really important. I left thinking about how different public space is now than it was 20 years ago. That was actually before any kind of social media. So it's like a completely different universe. I don't know. I think it's going to be a big challenge for us to.
Ross, excuse me,
Yeah.
Renee is trying to get back in. Can you see
Oh.
if she,
I don't, she hasn't popped in.
sorry, she was, that's who texted, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead
She
and
just said she was trying to get back in.
tell her that we're not seeing her on the entry
Sorry,
list.
sorry to interrupt.
No problem. Someone, I think maybe you had emailed me, Robin, about wanting to include something about Portsmouth 400 on the next meeting coming up in May. Was that you who had reached, or someone had reached out to me about Portsmouth 400? I do think that it would be good timing in May to either have someone representing Portsmouth 400 come, or to have some type of conversation.
Yeah, it
about
could have just been, maybe it was time, maybe it was Barbara?
Yeah, no, it was Robin, but I can, you did, Robin, you asked both of us if we could add it, but because of that, when I was on, I'm part of the legacy committee for the 400, and we met last week, and I brought it up with Valerie because she was in attendance, and she said that what they would like our help with is marketing the 400. That if any of us are submitting applications and have been approved, that we add the logo to our websites. That when we're talking about things or putting out press releases, adding something like, a proud member of the Portsmouth 400 committee to keep it in people's minds. She said she didn't feel that she needed to come back to this committee because she had been with us last fall. But I think her concern is one based on that not enough people know that this is ongoing right now, the planning for next year, and getting more people aware of it and involved in it. So that was her take, and she asked me to deliver that to this group.
Do you think that it would be, based on that, would it be okay to see if Lauren could come and present a toolkit for nonprofits that we could use? Because usually in these types of scenarios, I'm presented with a toolkit that says, this is ideally what you'd put in your signatures and your emails. This is what you'd put on your website. This is what you'd put on your Facebook page. This is what just a toolkit with some graphics and some language. and expectations of what would be an ideal situation for organizations to participate?
I think we can ask her, Russ. I know when my applications were approved, I got that from her.
Okay.
So, you know, it was directions to the logos and all kinds of different things. But yes, I think it would be good for for Lauren to present to this group. And I don't think, you know, I think Valerie would be fine with that. I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I think she'd be fine with that. And like I said, she didn't feel the need to return, but we can ask Lauren.
Would you mind asking both Valerie and Lauren, since you're involved with the Legacy Committee?
Sure.
And see if that's something they would be able to do, or Lauren could do for our May meeting on the 16th.
Which Lauren? Lauren Rosen?
Lauren Rosen, I think, isn't she doing work for Portsmouth 400 too?
Not in
Yes.
that, but not on the marketing team.
No, she's.
No, she is,
She's on the arts committee, but
Okay.
she's not involved, I don't think, Russ, with what you're talking about. in terms of
Okay.
There is a marketing committee.
All right,
She's not on
do we
it.
know who's involved with that?
so why don't I do this? Why don't I contact Valerie and say, can you put me in touch with the person who can do X, Y, and Z? And then I will turn that over to the group and see if that person can join us in May. Yeah, Lauren is overseeing the Arts and Cultural Committee.
Okay. All right,
Right.
thank you, Barbara.
Barbara, just crossing the Ts here, for language, we're talking about the brand standards for Portsmouth 400. I mean, that is the toolkit, just so.
Sure,
Valerie
yes,
knows what
yes,
we're talking
I think an umbrella of how to market, and that we all are marketing. So marketing and brand standards, I think, is the way we can frame that, Stephanie.
And I'm on that marketing committee, so I'm happy to do that if you'd like me to. If Valerie would like me to, that's fine.
Excellent.
Okay,
Go ahead, Nico.
Can we support getting the word out with our own marketing committee? Would that be, can we use our partnership, our C2 partners?
Maybe in the future, I want to be real careful about what we're doing with Darcy, because my hope is that we're going to have AFTA funding to further the work going forward. And I think there's very specific parameters of what AFTA funding can
Do
be
you mean
used for.
ARPA?
ARPA, thank you. Too many acronyms. ARPA funding, thank you, Robin. We're hoping to secure ARPA funding for continuing the marketing project. And there's very specific guidelines for what ARPA funding can be used for and not used for. And the real purpose of the marketing is building audience confidence to come back to arts organizations post-pandemic. There might be a way to tie Portsmouth 400 into that, but I think we have to be careful about mixing things in some ways. But yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
There's also a relationship between the city and Portsmouth 400. You don't want to get in the middle of those
Yeah.
weeds. So it might be best to let that, which should just be.
Yeah, you know, Stephanie, what I'm really looking for is understanding ways organizations can support visibility for Portsmouth 400 outside of the specific Portsmouth 400 activities that we're doing. That's kind of what I was hearing a little bit, I believe from Barbara there, is that keeping it front of mind within our circles, within our communities, and ways that we can do that. So, you know, that's what I'd be looking for next month.
Right, and Susan Labrie talked about that a little bit at the Tourism Summit, a similar kind of messaging about how everybody can be on board the same train without necessarily, because you've got some restrictions on the use of the official brand, that you are an official partner because you've been vetted by the committee, which basically is in favor of all the projects that have been supported, but just helps clarify questions about funding and things like that. But yeah, I'd be happy to, at Valerie's pleasure, to provide that update, or whomever she'd like to do that on May 15th, 16th, whatever
All
that
right,
date is.
excellent. Thank you, Stephanie. Any other comments or questions? Is there anything that people wanted to cover today?
Russ, just one,
Go ahead, Barbara.
sorry, just one more thing. I also let Valerie know that it is a challenge for many in this group to project ahead to 2023 as to what they're going to do, because that came up as a topic of conversation. And I said, you know, it's one thing when you have an event like a Market Square Day and you go, it's the second Saturday in June. But I think it was a conversation, Beth, that we had a few months ago, and you had said, and rightfully so, you don't even know what you're going to do in 6 months, let alone a year, because of COVID and what will impact on audiences and who's going to be here, who's touring. So I did mention that to Valerie, that if they're concerned that they're not seeing applications from some people, it's because they can't put an application in yet because they don't have visibility as to what they're going to be doing. And that we're all still going to be challenged by that, right? We just are. But I wanted to mention that to the group too, that I put that out there to her so she would understand it wasn't for lack of interest or lack of caring. It's literally because we can't.
Yeah, that makes sense.
One final thing, if Discover Portsmouth is up and running and people will start to come soon. So anybody from this group that has wrap cards, please make sure we get them so that we can give them to the people who have started to come.
It's gonna be a busy season. So.
Yeah.
Jen, did you have something?
Well, I just wanted to comment on Nico, sorry, because you got interrupted. When he was talking about the former cultural plan, that was before social media.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe how fast we've been moving. But that, you know, it sort of brought me to mind how things have changed so much. And I was thinking about, you know, we just did our storytelling festival, which we live streamed, and we had people watching it from all around the country. So what is the Portsmouth, you know, who is the community? I think that's something that is important to be addressed this time around. I just, you know, just putting that out there, because when you said that, it was like, good Lord, that was only, what, 20 years ago? So that was
I don't
just
think we
one.
could have imagined 20 years ago what we're experiencing right now.
No.
Yeah, definitely. It was pre-YouTube, pre-Facebook, pre-Twitter, pre-most of active, you know, active use of the internet. And yeah, pre-smartphones. Yeah, totally. Anything
Can I ask a quick
else? Go ahead. Beth.
Could I just ask a quick question? I don't want to take us entirely into Portsmouth 400, but could someone let me know if there are anchor events already established for Portsmouth 400 and what those dates are?
So there are 3 anchor events. There are 3 anchor events. And as far as I know, Barbara might know better than I, the parade has a date, which is Saturday, June 3rd.
It might be Sunday.
No, the meeting I had this week was
No.
Saturday.
It's Saturday, June 3rd. It's part of Riverfest. It's
Yeah,
all-
there was a conversation about moving it because of Riverfest, but it's stayed on Saturday. As far as I know, I just met with Trevor on Friday. And so could be moved, but the latest I heard on Friday was that there was discussion moved to Sunday, but staying on Saturday. Then there's a dinner that is supposed to be scheduled for August. Barbara, do they have a date for the dinner yet, or is that not public?
I haven't heard about a date for that.
Okay, but the goal was to have a community dinner. What,
August 28th.
August
I
28th is
don't know
what
if
they're
that's
aiming
public,
for?
it is now, so I might get yelled at for that, but the day I was told was August 28th. So
And then
it's-
the third is an air show that's being planned for September 2023 that doesn't have a date yet.
To my knowledge, it does not.
And that's just a matter of working with, I believe, either the Air Force or the Navy on securing that date. But those were the 3 signature events, that I believe is what they're calling it. The 3 signature events are the parade, which seems to be the most solidified of the 3, the dinner, which is being heavily worked on, and then the air show, which really relies on the government and the military to solidify that date. I don't know how quickly that date comes. I think those are the only 3 events, though, that are being run by Portsmouth 400, to my knowledge, and everything else is being supported as being run by another organization within the community. They're hoping that neighborhoods will be involved. They're hoping that different nonprofit and cultural organizations will be involved, and other groups as well. But those will all be independently produced by vetted groups and not actually by Towards the 400.
There's an Italian festival being planned by one of the 400 committees.
Yeah, and that's either like the last week in July or first week in August, I think. It's 2023.
So is it fair to say, though, that the parade then is seen as a kickoff event with most of the activities focused in the summer months?
Correct. That is very fair to say. I think that was very intentional. And yeah, and the parade's going to be, well, they're working on a really big bash for the parade. It's supposed to be quite memorable. So we'll see how it all comes together. But there's a good group. Trevor Bartlett, Monty Bohannon, myself, and Bryn Sullivan are working on it. So. Any other questions? Oh, go ahead.
Russ, can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
So one other event that is independently organized is a national conference called Keeping History Above Water. It will be, I think, the 8th or 9th. They've been in Charleston and Norfolk and Annapolis and Palo Alto and whatever. So we're trying to plan it now. And the question that has arisen is whether it makes sense to go with April 3rd. It's a Sunday, Monday night into Tuesday morning. So April 30th, May 1, 2 in 2023, or May 7, 8, 9. Does anybody in this group know of conflicts for either of those dates? The second one would be Children's Day on Sunday, but either Sunday, it would be, the thing would kick off in the evening, so.
I mean, as an educator, the only thing I tell you is that first weekend is the end of April break for the schools, but I don't know that that would impact that at all. So, and usually Sunday night people are back, but yeah. And Children's Day is the only other thing that I know that's consistently that weekend.
Okay.
I know the trail, the Black Heritage Trail, we're doing a festival for Juneteenth for the 400th. And we're working with a bunch of different partners, and it will be June 15th through June 19th.
Fabulous. Fantastic. Any other comments or questions on this, or anything that we didn't cover today that people wanted to address? All right, I don't see anything. So next meeting is on Monday, May 16th, and I look forward to seeing all of you then, and we'll keep in touch via email until then. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. So Russ, I'll go back and